Hello, welcome to episode 0, which I'm calling Voxel Heist, Unity Setup and Editor Fundamentals. Throughout this proposed series, we're going to be going over different mechanics and different aspects of Unity and what you can make with it. By the end of this series, I'm hoping that you'll be able to build this entire game that we'll be making from scratch. And in doing so, you'll be learning about Unity, C#, AI, shaders, camera systems, anything that is general enough that you'll be able to put to use in your own game. I'm going to be aiming for weekly uploads starting January 1st, or the week of January 1st, so hopefully this is up, and thank you for stopping by and watching. I'm going to preface this with you won't need any Unity or C# experience, as we'll explain everything as we go. To begin with, Unity. This is the game engine that we'll be using to create our game. And for coding, the language is C#. So that is a C and a pound symbol or a hashtag, where we would write code as we go on. So now that you've installed Unity, or the Unity Hub, we'll be starting with a new project. I'm using version 6.2.9. Feel free to use a more updated version, as they seem to be rolling out updates rather quickly currently. We'll be loading up this into the universal render pipeline, which you can see there are many options here, but we're just going to be using the universal instead of the high definition one. That's just due to personal taste, and to begin with, we're going to go with this because HDRP is a different system in terms of how the game would end up looking. So I called it Voxel Heist. I've set my location for where I want to use it. And I guess let's begin by creating our project. So, Unity has just loaded up. You'll see we have a lot of different windows, and don't worry if your Unity looks slightly different to mine. This is just how I like my personal layout of things. So, firstly, we have our scene view. This is how our game is represented whilst we create it and edit it. We also have a game view. So, for example, if I click on the main camera, you can see that we have a lot of things, which again we will get into as we go on. But this camera is what the player will see within the game. And you can see there's not much because there is not much in our scene. On the left-hand side, we have the hierarchy. Currently, you can see that we have our main camera, a directional light, which is acting as our virtual sun, and a global volume. This is for post-processing, so we can add different, essentially, special effects or camera effects to our game. On the right hand side, you can see that I have main camera selected. This is the inspector. This allows us to look at the different components or scripts on our objects that are in our scene. So to begin with, you can see the transform. This is what holds our position, rotation and scale. Position, obviously, being where it is within our world. The rotation, it likewise is just the rotation or the angle that an object is at. You can type numbers in manually. So if I type 10, it then sets the coordinate for x to 10, x being this red axis here. Rotation, you're also able to, instead of inputting numbers, hold down. So hopefully you can see my cursor. You can see that there are two little arrows when I hover over this that point left and right. If I left click, hold it down, I can drag to the left to rotate in one direction, drag to the right for another. It's the same with all the other abilities. And scale doesn't really affect our camera because of how cameras work. You'll see at the bottom we also have a project tab. This is what holds all of the scripts, the images or sprites, or 3D models. This basically mirrors the folder that our project is in within our computer. I'll just get rid of this README quickly. Within the scene viewer, there are different ways of us to move around from within this, but to add some scale and some context to what we're seeing, I'm going to add in an object. So in the hierarchy, I'm going to right click, and you can see we have a large menu pop up. I'm going to go to 3D object and click on a plane, and this just puts a plane onto the floor. By default, it will have the name highlighted so we can easily change its name. So I'm going to just change it to floor, and with the name entered, I can click on our object and press F on my keyboard to focus on it. So, with this, we can move our camera in quite a few different ways. If I hold down right click, which I'm doing currently, I can use the W, A, S and D keys. So W to move or zoom forward, S to go backwards, A to go left, and D to go right. Also, whilst holding down right click, as I move my mouse around, you can see it also changes where we're looking. So this, if you just want to practice with and get used to moving around, feel free to. You're also able to, still holding down right click, use Q to move downwards and E to ascend. With this as a combination, it allows you to move around your scene quite smoothly. You can also mouse wheel in and out to zoom in, zoom out. So, to give you a rough example of one of the main things that we'll be seeing a lot within Unity, I'm going to right click and add a cube. And we'll just leave its name as the default. And to pan around like this, I press the left Alt on my keyboard and left click with my mouse, and that allows us to just rotate around an object. So we're looking at the center. But as we focus on this cube, you can see how the lighting immediately is affected by it, or the shadows are created based on our directional light. So with this cube, we'll be able to show off the scale aspect that we'd spoken about earlier. You are able to edit them a third way, and this is with these arrows here. So we're able to move this cube around by left clicking on this gizmo and moving it around our plane. You can see I'm holding down this green square, and that means it only works in these two axes, the ones that are currently highlighted, so the one facing left and the one pointing toward us. For example, if I click the blue one, It's now those two axes, which is up and down, left and right. And you'll see in our inspector, as I'm moving this cube around, that the position is updating. But we can actually change this gizmo. So as a default, if you press the W key, it will go to this gizmo. If you press the E, this will then take us to rotation. We're able to move it however we fancy. And R allows us to scale. Clicking the center cube, so this grey one, not our big cube, but this grey one in the middle of the gizmo, scales everything at the same time. Or we can select a specific axis that we want to scale it on, and it will scale that way. I'll just undo everything, get back to not zeroed out, but planes over there, that's why. So again, feel free to just play around with this cube. We're not getting into making our game currently, we're just getting used to working within this new software. But as you can see, we have our camera still over here. We haven't edited this in any way, but if we click on game, we can now see what the player would see if we had them in the game. So I can click the camera and you can see the sort of view being projected out. So one of the beginning things that we can do that we've just spoken about is we can create a beginning player character. And what I mean by this is we can firstly create an empty. This is literally just a game object that has nothing on it whatsoever besides a transform. And remember, a transform is a position, rotation, and scale. And I'll call this player. And what I can do is create a new thing called a capsule. This is, as you'll see, it is just a capsule, a pill shape or a circle that has a cylinder wedged in the middle of it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the capsule in the hierarchy on top of the player. This has now made the capsule a child of the player, which is now the parent of the capsule. And you can see now when I select player, I still have the capsule highlighted because they are connected. So when I move the player, the capsule moves. If I rotate the player, the capsule rotates around the center of the player. What I can now do is, because the child follows the parent, I can zero out the position of the capsule, and this then means it is on the center of the player. And this is good for us because I can zero out the player again. But I can move the capsule up just one relative unit. So now it looks like they are on the floor. It's always a good thing to keep organised in this, because as we go on further, there will be a lot of things that end up in our hierarchy. So organisation is paramount. So having a name of player, and in this instance I'll do this as player model, because the capsule is acting as our very basic player model. So for this project that I've planned, we're going to attempt to make a isometric heist game. So either isometric or 2.5D. It is a style that can fake 3D depth on just a 2D plane. But in this instance, we will be actually rendering it in 3D. But in order to do that, what we can do is move our game camera. I'm going to set the transform, I'm going to set the position of our camera to be 10 on the X and minus 10 on the Z axis. I'm then going to rotate our camera, so on the Y axis, which is the green one, so it is pointing toward our plane. I'm going to do minus 45 to put that in exactly. I'm also going to, actually, this would be a good time to show. You are able to move these different widgets around, or windows around. So for our game, I'm going to just put it in the bottom right hand corner. So I still have my main scene view here, but I can get a preview essentially in the bottom right hand corner. So what I want to do is bring this up to, say, about 8, and then have our camera look down. So 45 should be a good angle. So see, yeah, we'll go for 12, and this will be the kind of view that we'll have in our actual game. It's no 10, yeah, and I like that. Again, it's fully up to you and what you like aesthetically. But for me, I think I like this angle. But if not, I can change it later down the line. Brilliance of games dev. So, this is where I'm going to end our episode 0. And hopefully, later down the line, you'll learn why I have started with an index of 0 on this series. But to go over everything that we've learnt today, we have installed Unity. We have created our first Universal Rendering Pipeline project, or URP project. We've learned about the editor, the different windows that we have access to, and we built our first sandbox level or scene. And hopefully some information has stuck with you. So next time we'll start looking at the different lighting, materials, and I'll be bringing in some game models that I've made to set the scenery of our game. But don't worry, these models don't have any significance for the game. We're, again, on this series learning about mechanics, so it's completely up to you about what your game looks like, as it will be your game. If you made it this far into the video, thank you for watching. Please, the standard stuff that everyone's saying, feel free to drop a subscription, a like, and I'll see you next time.